Hello and welcome to this video, Docker with Ansible. In this video, we're going to configure our Docker lab. We'll then use Ansible to pull Docker images, which we can then use to experiment with Docker. We'll use Ansible to build containers. We'll take this further and then we'll build customized images and customized containers. We're then going to use a very cool feature of Ansible, which isn't that well documented, but allows us to use Ansible to connect to running containers. Lastly, we'll terminate and remove our Docker resources. Please join me in this directory in the first revision. In our lab, we have Docker running in a dedicated container. Let's just double check that we can ping this. Okay, great, that's working as expected. To communicate with this and to make use of Docker with Ansible, we're going to need some more components. So if you just have a look at the following shell script, we're doing an apt update, we're installing docker.io, and then with pip3, we're installing the Docker Python libraries. Whilst we have Docker running in another container, we're going to use this local installation of Docker to actually connect from this host to our running container. Let's install these. And we enter the password. Okay, great. And if you look at the following file, within this, we're setting the docker_host environment variable. As I said briefly before, normally you wouldn't need to do this if you were running Docker locally, but in our case, we're running Docker remotely in another container. So this variable actually defines where to look and where to execute Docker. Let's source this file. And with that complete, we should now be able to run Docker commands. Okay, great. In our case, we don't actually have any running containers, which is showed there by the docker ps-a, and we don't yet have any Docker images. But both of these commands succeeded without any errors. So let's have a look at our first playbook. In this example, we're using the docker_image module. We're using this with items to pass a number of images into the module. Again, as we're using a remote Docker target, we have an entry for docker_host. If you were running Docker locally, you wouldn't need this. Okay, let's give this a try. Just a note, one of the images that we're pulling is quite large, so this may take a little bit of time. Okay, perfect. And if we now check with Docker images, you can see that we've got these images listed there. Okay, let's give them a go. If you have a look, there's an examples.txt file. I've added some friendly examples you can try. When you do so, you'll need to press either Q or Control-C to exit. They're a lot of fun, so for example, if we have a look at the first one, and we just paste that here. You can see that we've gone full matrix within our terminal. Pause the video here and give the other two a try. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed these. Let's have a look at revision 2, where we're going to use the docker_container module to spin up a Docker container. Okay, so we've got a new task here, and you can see that once again we're passing our Docker host. We have the image that we'll use, which in this case is Nginx. We're going to name the running container as container web server, and we're going to bind locally our port on 80 to 80 on the Docker system. If we run this, and if we take a look from a Docker viewpoint, you can now see that we've got a running container. And if we were to access this in our browser via our reverse proxy, we should see the Nginx web page. Okay, brilliant. So that's working as expected. Let's go back to the terminal. And if we go into revision 3, and we take a look at our playbook, for those who are not familiar with Docker, in this task, we're creating a Docker file, which essentially allows us to build our own images. Usually you would start from a base, and in our case, we're using Nginx here. The doc file at present has one line, and our customized image is the same as the Nginx image in functionality. In the next task, we're using the docker_image to build an image of Nginx customized with the tag latest, using the Docker file that we've created. Let's run this. And if we check our images, we now have an Nginx customized image. Note that the image ID is the same as the image ID for the Nginx image. If we take a look at the running containers, we can see that our container is, however, running using this new image. So we know that the process that we have works. Let's actually take this and customize this image properly. If we move into revision 4, and we take a look at our playbook, you can see as part of our customization process, we're copying an index.html file, which just has some simple text, and then we're overwriting the standard version with ours. Let's give this a try. Okay, that ran as expected. Again, if we run Docker images at this time, if you look there, you can actually see that the Nginx customized now has a different image ID to that of the Nginx. The reason being, we have actually customized this further from the baseline Nginx image that we started with. If we also go back and we check via our reverse proxy, you can see that this has the text from the index.html page that we supplied. Brilliant. Okay, let's go back to the terminal and go into revision 5. And what we're going to look at now is a great feature which allows us to connect to running containers via Docker with Ansible, essentially treating them like targets. Let's bring up the example here. A requirement for this to work is that A, the container in question has Python, and B, is running. So you can see here, we're pulling a Python image. I've implicitly chosen 3.8.5 to keep this example as stable as possible, but technically you should be able to leverage any container with an Ansible supported Python version. And the container needs to be running. Thus, you see here sleep infinity as the container command when running the containers. We're also making use of a simple sequence loop to spin up 3 of these. In a separate play, the host is targeting a host group of containers and we're just doing a simple ping. So if we have a look at the inventory associated with this, at the bottom, we've added Python 1, 2, and 3 as a range, and the most important piece to get this working is the Ansible underscore connection specified as Docker. Lastly, in this case, we've also specified the Python interpreter, as without this, it will work, but it will give you warnings telling you that you need to actually specify it. Let's give this a try. Okay, fantastic. And as you can actually see there, we've actually run the ping command from containers. This is very cool, and with an open mind, there's a lot that this could be used for in your Ansible journeys. At the moment, we now have a lot of items dotted around, for example, images and containers. Let's clean this up by using Ansible. If you step into revision 6, and we take a look at the playbook here, at the top, we're removing the old containers. Then we're removing images, and lastly, we're removing the files. Let's run this. Okay, great. And if we look now, we should have a nice clean setup. Perfect. Okay, that's it for this one. Please join me in the next section, creating modules and plugins.